Today is the non-tender deadline for baseball. We'll talk about the decisions that are looming for your Detroit Tigers. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, November 22nd, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place just a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. So just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome in, welcome all. Happy Friday, everybody. So on this Friday, this is a pretty important date for Major League Baseball. This is the non-tender deadline. So essentially, everybody that has under 6 years of Major League service, so everybody in baseball that is not a free agent, for the most part, has to have their contracts retendered. If there is still team control over that player for the organization that they are currently in, the team has to obviously willingly choose to bring them back every year. So their contracts have to be tendered. Now, usually the debate around tendering and non-tendering players happens much more around the arbitration-eligible guys because they are the ones that are getting paid way more, right? The guys that are pre-arb, I mean, those are, for the most part, those are league minimum contracts. So, there is some debate. We will talk about some guys that are pre-arb that may be in consideration this year just to free up a roster spot, certainly. But there is usually much more on a macro scale debate over the guys that are in arbitration. This also, I want to make this clear, this is also not, especially for the pre-arbitration guys, this is not a death sentence to their time in the organization necessarily. There's a lot of intricacies with the financial aspect of how a lot of these contracts are handled. And so last year, for instance, just this time a year ago, Brennan Hanafy was non-tendered by the Detroit Tigers and then was almost immediately re-signed to a minor league contract. And then in 2024, pitched very meaningful baseball out of the Tigers bullpen down the stretch in a playoff run. So this is, again, the ARB guys, maybe that's a little bit more of a concrete, finite, this relationship is probably over. But for the pre-arb guys, especially the fringe major leaguers or the guys that are projected to start off the season in the minors, there is still a decent chance that those guys are non-tendered and then, re-signed immediately. That's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. But if you're talking about established major leaguers that are getting non-tendered, those guys are just going to be free agents and probably going to sign elsewhere. We're going to break this into two different groups, the arbitration eligible players and the non-arbitration eligible players. Most of the pre-arb guys, like I said earlier, they're going to get league minimum contracts, and it's going to be a lot more flexible and easier for the organization to move them later in the winter. Now, obviously, if you DFA somebody, they're on waivers and everybody else can have a chance to pick them up and whatnot. So if you already know that they're not going to make it through the winter, it is more beneficial for you to cut them loose now and then still give you a chance, like I just said, to sign them back on a minor league deal or renegotiate or whatnot with them. So we'll discuss the projected salaries for the arbitration eligible guys. Let's start off with that group. There are 9 players on the Major League roster that are arbitration eligible that will be a part of the arbitration process, or the Tigers, which most teams love to do, avoid arbitration at all costs like it's the plague, because it has a very common history of completely diminishing player and organization relationships. And I brought this up a few weeks ago, but it makes sense as to why. Imagine at your job, whatever you do for a living, imagine that every single year, your salary is not predetermined. You have to go in front of a third party arbitrator, and your direct boss who signs your paychecks has to tell this third party how bad you are at your job and why you don't deserve the amount of money you think you deserve. Not exactly the business of making friends or carrying out, sunshine and rainbows and happy, good relationships between players and the organization. So, what most organizations try to do with everybody, and the Tigers did it with everybody last year, I think everybody 2 years ago as well. Most organizations do this, and the Tigers have been really good about it over the last few years. Is okay, what's your number? Okay, well, here's my number. Let's settle somewhere in the middle on just a 1-year contract and avoid this arbitration thing altogether. So hopefully that is what happens across the board. We're going to start off with a layup, a nice, easy one here. Tarek Skubal is obviously not going anywhere. Hilarious that we even have to bring him up, but he is arbitration eligible. His projected salary via Major League trade, MLB trade rumors, I guess. I almost said Major League Baseball trade rumors. Same thing. Is $8 million in arbitration. We'll see what happens. This is going to be the first initial kind of contact on a contract extension between the Detroit Tigers and Tarek Skubal. I don't think they're going to get one done this winter. I know a lot of people are kind of holding out hope that he is extended relatively soon. I don't think it's going to happen. So I would expect him to get paid around that $8 million. I think the Tigers will probably play a little bit nicer with Skubal. The perks of being one of the best pitchers in baseball. The Tigers aren't going to be like, oh no, like we don't think you deserve that much money. He is obviously worth whatever number is written down on the piece of paper. So I would imagine that they will not go to arbitration with him and probably give him close to just whatever he is asking for. Again, albeit or aside from not including a long-term contract, which I'm sure they are at a minimum in the preliminary stages of. We talked about that report a couple of weeks ago where there was an offer made and it was uncompetitive. So again, that's like so far off that I would imagine he's just going to be back on a 1-year deal, and it's going to be around whatever he was projected to make in arbitration. Jake Rogers, another kind of slam dunk. Jake Rogers not going anywhere. He is projected to make $2.5 million via the arbitration process. That's one that might end up being a little bit lower, but we'll see. Either way, he's not going anywhere. There's not much of a conversation surrounding, like, is he going to get non-tendered? No. Jake Rogers and Tarek Skubal obviously will both be back post this non-tender deadline. Let's talk about a little bit more of the more difficult conversations, a little bit more of the fringe guys that could go either way. We will talk about that and more right after this. Got to talk to you today about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite teams play even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on seats that you want to see, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. They have a ton of great features as well. All-in pricing, my favorite feature of Game Times. You can toggle this feature, and then all of a sudden you get your entire total up front. There's no hidden fees at checkout or anything like that. Just straight up what the total is going to be. The Game Time Picks feature uses curation and makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And also, obviously, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. And we will, of course, be back on Monday recapping the decisions that are made Friday afternoon. If there's like a huge surprise, like, you know what I mean? Like if Spencer Torkelson is for some reason non-tendered, which he won't be. But like if there's a huge, massive surprise, then we'll probably do like an emergency episode Friday night. But I think we're probably safe from any of the huge, big surprises. I say that, and it'll be, famous last words. So we will be back on Monday recapping the decisions that are made here, and then looking ahead, obviously continuing just our off-season calendar. So who are the other players that are arbitration eligible? Well, the Tigers don't have anybody that is becoming a free agent like naturally, just via their contract running out this year, and only have 2 or 3 guys that are beyond the arbitration process. Obviously, Baez, Maeda, guys they went out and signed. So most of the team, almost all of the team is somewhat eligible for this conversation, but like most of them are no-brainers. Of course, we're just going to keep them, right? Parker Meadows, Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, go down the line. The ARB guys, we talked about Skubal, we talked about Jake Rogers. Will Vest, projected to make $1.4 million. I cannot see a world in which Will Vest is non-tendered. He was fantastic down the stretch. He's been here for a few years. He's been really solid almost across the board. I would fully expect Will Vest to be back in 2025 and to not be on the non-tender list. Casey Mize, this is probably the first one that is a little bit shaky. He is projected to make $2 million through arbitration. So this one's tough. I personally would be surprised if Casey Mize was non-tendered. I think if I saw his name Friday afternoon on, the Tigers PR tweet that'll go out when they, make all of their official decisions and whatnot, I would be surprised if Casey Mize's name was on there. But I also, if it is on there, I can also understand why to an extent, right? This is a guy who just unfortunately hasn't been very healthy over the last few years. And when he has been on the field, has not been, he didn't make the the wild card round roster, right? Like he didn't make, or was it the ALDS? One of the two. He didn't make the roster, right? And so I think when we are, again, I still think he's going to, but given the drama that happened last year with, are they going to go to arbitration? They almost did, and then they settled, and there was a player option, but then they opted out of that, or a team option, rather. They opted out of that team option earlier this year. That's not a surprise because he's projected to make way less in arbitration than what that would have paid him. Like it all could be nothing, and it could just be, they're going to bring him back. He's going to make about $2 million, and they'll go into next year, and that would be the least surprising thing ever. But there is a little like voice in the back of your head that's kind of like, I don't know. Like this has been a weird last 24 months for him in the organization, and given the development of pitching that they have, and given the fact that they are probably still going to sign multiple starting pitchers anyways, I think there might be at least more of a chance than anybody we've talked about so far, albeit maybe not likely either. So he's a guy just to keep an eye on. Again, I still expect him to be on the team post Friday. I don't think he's going to get non-tendered, but I think it's at least a little bit more of a discussion than the rest of the guys we've talked about so far. Jason Foley, kind of a layup, $3.5 million projected salary. He'll be back. Matt Vierling, $3 million projected salary. He'll be back. Andy Ibanez, $1.5 million. There might be a little bit of a conversation there as well. Again, maybe not super likely, but more than a lot of the other guys we've talked about so far. I think with Ibanez, like the numbers did take a little bit of a step back this year, and in the second half he kind of struggled. But I think that this team is going to hold on to any right-handed hitter that is a specialist against left-handed pitching, because they don't really have very many of those on the roster. So I still expect Ibanez to be back, but with all of these utility guys, there's going to be a slight chance that they are, that they part ways with, or maybe, okay, he's a free agent and you can renegotiate. Maybe you think you can get him for less than $1.5 million. We'll see what happens. Bo Brisky, $1.3 million. He's not going anywhere. That's an easy one. The last name is Zach McKinstry for $1.3 million. I think of this list, he is the most likely to get non-tendered. A lefty in a lineup that was full of lefties, and assuming Trey Sweeney is around again next year, McKinstry's role diminishes more and more and more as the team gets better and better, which is like a sign of a healthy organization and a sign that this thing's heading in the right direction. But for McKinstry personally and his role on the team, I mean, this guy played in like almost every game 2 years ago. 2023, his first season here. And then this year took a step back, played less because they got more players to fill different positions. But like, especially if they're planning on going out and getting a third baseman, you're talking about a lefty. Okay, well, he's not going to play too much in the outfield then, because we have a billion lefty outfielders. He's not going to play second because we have Colt Keith and Andy Ibanez. He's not going to play short because we have Trey Sweeney and Javi Baez. Third, I guess, right? I mean, Vierling and McKinstry, you could platoon third, but if you're going to go out and address third base this year, then like that becomes null as well, and then you're left with him just kind of being a super utility. But there's already multiple people that fit his profile, or they're just straight up better hitters than him at every position. So I'm not saying this is a guarantee. Zach McKinstry, I think the organization loves Zach McKinstry, and I think that he did a really good job turning around his season there in the middle of that hot streak the team had. But just given his limitations offensively and what his presumed role is going to be going forward, that this is, I think, the highest likelihood of all of the arbitration guys so far of getting non-tendered. It would not shock me whatsoever. Really, either way, it wouldn't shock me. I would not be stunned if he was kept, because we know the organization is fond of him and what he can do. And it really wouldn't shock me if he was non-tendered either. So we'll see what happens. Maybe he's like the 50-50 guy, and that's probably the highest likelihood I have of those 9 players. Of the non-arbitration, the pre-arb guys, Akil Baddoo. Interesting conversation here. So first off, there's already some conflicting reports about whether Akil Baddoo is or isn't arbitration eligible. He was Super 2 at one point. So from my understanding, he did not play enough games this year to get another year of Major League service, and is not going to be arbitration eligible. That being said, I think that there's a really good chance that he is non-tendered. He's another guy where if they decided to keep him, I would understand it. But, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in segment 3, I also think that he is a guy that we could see traded before the non-tender deadline. Somebody that the Tigers look at and go, okay, we're going to non-tender him. If we non-tender him, he becomes a free agent where anybody can sign him. So let's try to find a team that maybe still likes his profile and wants to take a chance on him, and trade him to said team before I think it's 5 p.m., 6 p.m., whatever time it is in the afternoon, deadline, and see if we can at least get something for him. And their selling point is he's going to be a free agent and could just not sign with you if you don't do this. I think there's a chance I also, as we talked about in the Akil Baddoo player breakdown, if he is not non-tendered, okay, if he is tendered, if he is brought back and is not on that list of players come Friday's deadline, that would be another one where I wouldn't be floored. I wouldn't be jaw on the floor. Oh my goodness, there's no way they kept Baddoo. No, like we talk about the profile all the time. We talk about his youth all the time. But this is now a really good outfield, and they're all lefties. So the avenue for Akil Baddoo to break through and be a legitimate starter at the major league level for the Detroit Tigers is unbelievably slim at this point in the organization's life. It has nothing to do with him individually at all. It's just they have three really, really good. You could argue their three best non-pitchers are literally our entire outfield. So I think Baddoo is a really big candidate to get non-tendered on Friday. Let's talk about a few more names, then we'll kind of wrap it up. There's some big picture stuff I want to talk about as well. We'll do all of that right after this. Got to talk to you today about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place all of your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back. Your third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always. So, talked about Akil Baddoo. I think there's a few other names that I want to bring up just as kind of long shots here that might get non-tendered. Mason Englert, I'm surprised he made it through the Rule 5 protection deadline. So I'm going to talk about him again. Alex Faedo, I still think probably makes it through, but he's also a candidate. The reason why those two are on here is because if you just look at the dynamic of what the Tigers added at the Rule 5 protection deadline, we talked about this. This is kind of a regurgitated conversation that we talked about on that episode, but like they're all righty relievers. So your need for a ton of righty relievers on the 40-man obviously goes down. I think there's a chance that Englert is somebody that is a casualty of this deadline. Alex Lang, interesting one. I don't think Lang is going anywhere. I still think the organization thinks that the ceiling is too high to give up on, and he's hurt. Like, that's kind of a weird thing to non-tender somebody that's injured. You don't see that too terribly often. But if there was anybody, it would be Lang, like to kind of break the norm of that. Like, this has just been a weird last year for him. Like, I'm not even talking about the injury, just his walk numbers are getting worse, not better. And he's working with one of, if not the best pitching coaching staff that baseball has to offer. And then we saw that thing on the mound where AJ Hinch kind of looked like he was cussing out Alex Lang on the mound for a mound visit. And then Lang got out of the inning, if I'm remembering correctly. And then he was demoted to AAA, right? Like, people forget because he got hurt. Like, no, he was demoted first and then got hurt in Toledo. So I don't know what to make of that. I would still be really surprised if he was. That's one where I would be genuinely shocked, but I think there's enough of a chance to at least bring his name up in this conversation. Ryan Kreidler, another one. We talked about the possibility of him not making it through the Rule 5 deadline, so he'll come up again here. Matt Manning isn't going to happen, but just somebody, again, who's also had a weird go the last year and a half with the organization, not pitching very much at the major league level this year, trying some new stuff in spring training, and then the regular season comes around and he doesn't throw those pitches anymore. It's just weird. So I'm going to put his name out there, but I don't think he's going to get non-tendered. either. And then obviously we'll just end with like the guys that were DFA'd earlier this week. That's pretty common practice to DFA somebody for the for the Rule 5 draft and for the Rule 5 protection deadline, and then just end up non-tendering them a few days later at the non-tender deadline. So we'll probably see, like, Eddie Leonard is somebody that the Tigers could non-tender and then sign back immediately on a minor league deal. He's off the 40-man roster, but he's back with the organization when the injured list opens back up in March, right? Maybe they add some players onto the injured list. They have some 40-man roster spots open up, and there you go. Eddie Leonard is right back on the 40. So we'll see what happens with him. I think there's a decent chance that does occur with Leonard. I'm hoping that it does. I would love for him to stay in the organization. Other thing to watch out for, as I mentioned earlier, is just trades. Trades are very, very common before the non-tender deadline. I don't think the Tigers have been a part of one in a while. I'm trying to think. McKinstry was right before opening day because he was out of options. I can't recall off the top of my head a non-tender deadline trade the Tigers have been a part of, but around the league, it's a very, very popular day for trades because of what I explained earlier with the Badu situation. So there's a real chance that there's going to be a lot of trade rumors and talks swirling. And after the deadline is kind of fun because then you get a whole wave of new free agents that, like, we have not discussed. We have not talked about any of these guys that are about to be free agents as potential fits for the Tigers organization. Now, granted, they are players that were not good enough to stay on their own team's 40-man roster. So you're not talking about like MVP candidates here, but there is a new crop of talent that is going to be added to the free agent pool this weekend and today as you're listening to this. So that'll be kind of a fun thing that we can again recap on Monday, talk about some of the biggest names around the league that maybe were non-tendered, if there's a fit for any of them in the Tigers organization and whatnot. Okay. I think that's pretty much it. Really cool to see the Scooble recognition nationally. That's really the only other thing I got is just kind of like, I don't know, man. It's just really cool to see after being just so bad for so long. It's just awesome to see. Like, we have a superstar. Like, we have one of, if not the best pitcher in baseball. And that's just so cool. And seeing, the MLB account post about him and all these fans from other fan bases talking about him and his season and whatnot, it just rocks. It just absolutely rocks. And couldn't be happier for him. The video of him watching the video the Tigers made of like all of his teammates and Detroit celebrities and whatnot congratulating him is so cool. He's just like laughing and smiling, trying not to cry. He makes fun of Will Vest, which was like one of the funniest things ever. He looks at Will Vest. Will Vest is like giving a heartfelt, like, oh, thank you, for everything you've done. Like, couldn't have happened to a better guy, whatever. And Tarek Skubler just looks over at his family and goes, oh, you should have left him out of the video. Like, he's just like cracking jokes about the players. I don't know. It's just really, really cool to see. So very much deserved. Unanimous. I realized I didn't mention that it was unanimous yesterday, which is totally my fault. That was the only drama was going to be whether it was unanimous or not. And it sure as heck was. So tip of the cap to Tarek. We'll be back Monday, baby. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. See y'all Monday. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. Let me know your predictions for this is also, I want to make this abundantly clear. We could just hold on to everybody. That's like very much in the realm of possibility here. We did a whole 30-minute conversation about the coulds and could nots. They could very much just hold on to everyone. So we'll see. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all Monday to talk about it, baby. Go Tigers.